Welcome aboard. Nice. I'm honored that you're here. Chris, the way I like to start these things is having you introduce yourself. So, because thousands of people are going to see this, I'm going to be posting this everywhere. I would love people to get to know you through your own words. Would you mind?
Not at all. First, I want to thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
It's so much fun. Of course, I love talking about art and talking about what I do with it. My name is Chris Carter, and I've been an artist my entire life, though I didn't realize it. I certainly did not grow up in an artistic family, but what I did grow up with was a family that supported curiosity. And I wasn't a talented artist in any way when I was little. I think I chose the direction because I absolutely loved illustrated children's books. They just took me to other places. My parents read to me constantly, as I've read to my children constantly. And then my dad nurtured what was my gift, which was curiosity. So they always answered my questions, and we didn't have a lot of money. So he fixed the washing machine, he fixed the car, he fixed all those things. And I have 3 siblings. He always welcomed us to help with whatever. So I learned how to use tools when I was really, really young. And to make something, even to put a hole in a piece of wood, was so thrilling to me. So I think as far as art goes, it was challenging because I could not draw at all. And I didn't care about making something that looked real. I wanted it to feel real. So drawing was not my cup of tea, because the praises from my parents and from teachers were all to the people who made drawings that duplicated a photograph. And my parents took me to museums when we lived close to New York City. And I was thrilled in the rooms of modern art. I was swept away to these lands unknown, out into the cosmos, from splashes of color and streaks and lines. And it just, I get shivers thinking about it, because it was like, whoa, I don't know what this is, but what I was hearing was, my 2-year-old can do that, which, was what the times were. Abstract expressionism was really kind of new, and people were fighting against it. So I never considered myself an artist. And in one of my videos, I talk about how I think I came in as a sculptor more, because I think 3-dimensionally. I still have to translate everything into 2 dimensions. And I have identical twin daughters who are now 36, and a son who's 34. He's the one that pilots me when I parapaint.
So talk about that a little bit, because I know this story, but the people who are watching this don't. Could you take me through the entire process of how? I know the whole story, but what your son did all the way to it actually happening. I don't want to spoil the story.
Okay. So I'll skip the other one. The other one, basically, I translate. And what I wanted to say was that though my daughters are identical, they're totally different human beings. And one learns 3-dimensionally and one learns 2-dimensionally. So when I would help them with math, I would build things for Nicole, and I would just write things out on paper for Alexis. So, and that was another thing I learned as a child, was if one thing doesn't work, you try it another way. And that's how I teach. I teach with many approaches because I know the substance so well now. Anyway, so one of the things, I don't really care about finished artwork. What I love is the process of exploring, of discovering. I think I know how to draw a car, but I don't really until I start to draw it. And I love challenges and solving problems. So for me, and I also love heights. As a child, I dreamt I had flying dreams constantly. And I just wanted to fly. I wanted to jump off the top of every building I went to. So at times when I was a little depressed, I had to stay away from windows because I thought that's the way to go. Just leap out the window and fly. So my son started, he loved flying too. Well, he loved the air and the idea of flying. When he was younger, he wanted to be an astronaut when he was really, really young. And he had a vision disability where his eyes were 20/20, but they didn't work together. So at one point, we reprogrammed his brain and his eyes worked together. Now he's a rocket scientist. So, it worked really well. And he was piloting planes, but just like when I was a rock climber, being exposed on a cliff was pretty wonderful in Yosemite, north face of Half Dome, it was awesome, but it wasn't flying. Only when I fell was it like flying. So he was involved with NASA a little bit and was sent to Europe as a NASA ambassador and met up with someone who was a paraglider. And he took him paragliding and he was completely hooked, completely. And he said, "Mom, this is what you always dreamt of." Because I jumped out of planes and I did all these things thinking I would feel like I was flying, but never did. He said, "This is it. You've got to come with me." So he moved out to California and where he was working on the mission to the moon. And he was paragliding more and more. So when I would go out to teach in the San Francisco, Santa Rosa area, we would hike together and I'd always go off with him when he would launch. And he kept saying, "You've got to do this." And I said, "Well, I want to do it." So I would go out and friends of his were tandem pilots. They were certified to take me. But every time I went out, here's California. I brought the rain with me and the change in wind. So it was a good 2 years of going out 4 times a year to teach before the wind was right and I got my first tandem flight. And it wasn't with Mike because he wasn't certified. He had just started. So at that point, I said, okay, I don't know how, but I have to be able to paint while flying around up there. Because I paint on the cliff sides. Wherever I go, I paint or sketch. So I wanted to be able to sketch when I'm flying around. And you fly with the birds. They come, it's great. So that meant that Mike had to become certified. And because he was very nervous about taking his mom, didn't want me to get hurt because I have a metal hip, which doesn't hold me back from anything, but still he didn't, want to be careful. So it actually took us 3 years from the time that we said, we're going to do this together and we're going to fly across the Alps together. You fly, you land, you camp, and then you run off the cliff again. So that's what I did. And I created this aerial studio so that everything was attached. I had to drill a hole in my fountain pen because if you drop something, you don't want it to land, not that it's going to land on somebody's head because most of the time you're in the mountains, but you just can't be having things fall off when you're flying around. So everything had to be attached. And the first one I made, and I never get motion sickness, but I'd made my drawing board too large. So whenever I was looking down sketching, it cut off my peripheral vision. And my eyes thought I was sitting still, but my body knew I wasn't, which is how you get motion sickness. And I became very, very sick. So that was my first episode of parapainting. And then after that, I went back to his place. I redesigned my whole system. Now it's just a little sketchbook like that. And now I can fly anywhere and paint. So I call it parapainting. And I use watercolor and fountain pen. So it's ink and then watercolor. And it's the thrill of running off the cliff attached to my son is amazing. And did I tell you how you launch?
I know how you launch, but please describe your experience.
Okay. Well, I'm attached in the back, but it's somewhat loosely, I guess. I have to look at that contraption a little bit more because I'm facing the edge of the cliff. I'm going to be running forward. Mike is turned around so that he can lift the wing and have it catch. So when he lifts it, it doesn't always, catch properly. So I'm waiting for him to say launch and count backwards 10. And as soon as he says launch, then he spins around because his hands are, so now all the lines are straight. And we both just run. And the wind comes and lifts us up and we're airborne. And we both like acrobatics. So I'm not painting when we do our swirls and things together. But
so you get launched and then you pull out all of your stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And it's all attached to things. And you can kind of see it in some of the videos that are on my YouTube channel. And you'll see the two different systems. But yeah. And then sometimes it's so beautiful up there. And I stopped painting because it's not about making nice paintings. I just wanted to prove to myself that I could figure out the right tools and the right way to pack it safely and be able to run off because you can't take much with you. And to be able to do both watercolor and ink while flying around in the air.
So, such an unbelievable story because it combines so many beautiful things in addition to the bond between a mother and a son and the love of flying and the love of art. It's so, any entrepreneur, anyone who has inspiration by whatever they do can find energy through this.
Yeah, it's why not? If you can dream it, you can at least try to do it.
Yeah.
And that, it was a dream forever. And may I share another short story about the
That's what this is all about.
My son sent me a video. It's a documentary made by the BBC, I think, and it's on eagles. And this man, I may not be getting it all right, but he just he studied eagles. His whole dream was to be able to fly, to feel what it would be like to fly like an eagle. And so somehow my son was contacted, maybe from the BBC, because he's done a bunch of stuff with them, and said, would you take him paragliding? So he did. So he met, I guess, I don't remember where they went from, but in this wonderful documentary, towards the end is the man on his first paragliding flight. And I just related to it so much because it was a lifelong desire for me to be totally in the air. I mean, in a glider, it's really, really noisy. In a real glider, and I tried flying those for a little bit. And a hang glider is this huge contraption that you have to put together and then land. But this is just, everything is in your backpack.
Yeah.
And off you go. So this man was just beside himself that he was able to do this in his lifetime, to be up there in the air flying like an eagle. And one day when I went tandem that time, but I hadn't been painting up there yet. And I just landed and I looked up. This was at Big Sur in California. And there were huge birds up there. And I thought, whoa, they look bigger than eagles. It turned out there were 13 condor that had come over to fly with the other paragliders up there. And it's like the paragliding pilots will look to see where the birds are catching their thermals, and the birds will watch to see where the paragliders catch their thermals, and they end up flying together.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
such
anyway,
a collaboration, like just collaboration between man and beast, really.
Yeah.
How did your art change before paragliding and after paragliding?
I don't know that it changed significantly. Not the art. I mean, when I'm in the studio, I work on large abstract work in either oil or watercolor. But when I travel, which used to be 7 months out of the year before the pandemic, I work in a sketchbook and I work from reality, and every day I sketch representationally to keep my eye and hand coordination going. Because even when I'm painting abstractly, if I see something that's happening, I need to have the control to create it, and now I'll often bring a figure out from an abstract, or, it's telling a story to me. And it's going to be a different story for the viewer. It doesn't matter what my story is. So I think in paragliding, having finally done that and painted, I knew for sure it was not about creating this painting. And I knew that didn't matter to me. I realized that so much of my personality, so much of what drives me is solving problems. And I solved the problem. So I can now go, and I can't wait to be out there again and painting again. And I have some other ideas of approaches that I'll take, but it's just because I want another challenge. What surprised me is that when I landed, there were a lot of other pilots there, and they were so thrilled because he'd heard about Mike's mom for so long, and I'd met them before, but there were a lot of tears all over the place when Mike and I ran off the cliff together for the first time.
Wow.
It was great. So when I landed, and everybody's nervous because they knew how, every time when I land, they're always worried about me because I'm older. I'll be 70 in October, and, it's just not something that every 70-year-old goes out to do. So they came running over, and they couldn't wait to see what I painted. And they looked at it, and I was a little embarrassed. It's like, oh, it just looks like a big mess. And they knew exactly. They said, oh, look, and they named the cliff.
Wow.
This was like a montage because you're moving around. So the mountain over here, and then the mountain's over there, and then they say, oh, and there's the road that goes to God knows where. And they could decipher this mess of a painting that I had done. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. I guess I can just go and paint from my heart and just never, ever worry about whether people get it or not. Because some will and some won't.
I've looked at your art since you came into my program. I've been exposed to you and to your art, and I've spent a lot of time looking at it. And I think we had a conversation earlier about how you use the minimum amount of information to convey the maximum amount of detail, and that seems like what was experienced there. And then you eloquently said you try to paint the essence. You try to create the essence. And that's really what it is. Do you have any of your art within arm's reach that you could show? And it's okay if you don't.
I do. I have a pile of things that I was going to use for the work webinar on Monday. Yeah. Hang on. And I am responding to the energy of the musicians, the audience, the rhythms and patterns of the sound. And many of these musicians had never played together either. And the dancers. So it's all about the collaboration of art, music, all, dance, whatever it is. Okay, so this is a drummer. Okay, and all of these were about 30 seconds or a minute.
Oh, wow.
Here are 4 different musicians, and you can see that I use watercolor just to call attention to the characters, but each of the faces are totally different because I'm responding to the musicians that are up there. And these really loose things, but you know what they're playing. This too. Okay, so they're just really quick. A dip pen is so quick, and it makes blops, and it doesn't matter if it makes blops. Here's another one.
Oh,
So I'm using warm and cool colors. And I don't see the colors until the morning when I turn the lights on.
that one reminds me a lot of some of the other stuff that I've seen from you. Yeah. Oh, wow.
That guy was totally wild. I mean, I was really happy when I saw this in the morning because that's exactly how he was. Is the word frenetic? I'm not sure. He was just like over the top, like a Jimi Hendrix of something. This is different. This is a very staid and, kind of a meditative sketch. Like I said, I sketch every day. And when I travel, this was on my friend's dining room table. Here's another one. Now, this was not a musician. Well, she is a musician, but she was waiting to play. So she was just sitting at a table. She's this gorgeous young woman who plays bass guitar. Wow. And she just blows everyone away. But then there's the real kind of, here's one version. This is Steel Stacks. It's a performance center in Easton, Pennsylvania. So here are the stacks like this. And that same night, about 5 minutes later, I did this one, which is the same location, but just a different way of approaching. And then we've got, again, a very, very simple, I love stand-up bass.
Wow.
So those are some.
Now, you had mentioned that you were collecting those to use in a class that you have coming up. Talk to me about the class.
Well, the class happened on Monday night. It was a webinar for not sure I can say this correctly, the Dinas Powys art group in Cardiff, Wales.
Okay.
And I presented that. They meet every week. Now they meet, online because of pandemic. And apparently they have guest tutors twice a month because their main teacher, that's a lot to prepare for, each time. But they had never had an international tutor before. But I teach in Wales, and I teach in Abergavenny and Swansea, 2 places in Abergavenny. So one of the places, when they were contacted by the woman who sets up the guest tutors, asked for a list of Chapel Cottage's tutors, and Tiz said, "Well, you've got to call Chris first. She's top on our list." So that's how I got it. And of course, when they contacted me, I was thrilled, and it's now I have a whole new community to visit in Wales.
Amazing.
Meet up and we sketch together, then have a coffee or a pint of ale or a glass of wine, and just share each other's knowledge and inspiration.
It's incredible. It's inspiring to hear. If you think about your entire life as an artist, or when you formally define yourself as an artist or not, what has been? There are 2 questions here. What has been the highest moment? What's been the highest highlight for you? And then equally but oppositely, what has been the biggest struggle?
Oof. I could go on forever on the struggle end.
Just the biggest.
Well, okay. I guess the biggest would be when I was in college and I was nominated and voted as the worst painter in the department.
Wow.
Or I should say, that's wrong. We each brought a painting. It was my painting that was nominated as the very worst. And the problem with that is it was the only painting I had ever done where I felt that my spirit was in it.
Wow.
And it was voted as, who would even do that? What were the teachers thinking to do that to anybody?
Yeah.
But many times I tried to stop attempting to be an artist. I threw all my things out, put all my paintings, most of my paintings in a landfill, but I couldn't stop. I kept going back. And in terms of the high points, some that I thought would be high points, and I think you're going to understand this, and a lot of people who may be watching this eventually will understand as an entrepreneur. You have a goal, and you think, when I reach that goal, that I will have made it, Then I know I'm really an artist, or then I know I'm really whatever. Well, first time that I had a painting, actually it was a photograph, it wasn't a painting, but I did a lot of black and white photography too. And first time it was in a real museum. And it was on my birthday that the opening was. Mm. And I just was like, I thought, I'm going to feel on top of the world. I felt on top of the world for all of about 5 seconds. And I was, how old was I? I think I may have been mid-20s or something. And immediately it's like, well, now what do I do? And the exhibition's going to come down eventually. And so what now? Because I hadn't seen or thought past that. Yeah. And so that, which I thought would be a high point, isn't. I think that there are two high points for me, which is odd because I've had quite a number of huge solo shows, 75 big paintings, big shows. But the two that have meant the most to me was one small show in a small gallery in Easton, Pennsylvania, that exhibited I matted and framed, I don't know, maybe 60, 70 of the sketches of the musicians. And these were all musicians who lived in the area that I had. And they were thrilled. When I would show up, I'd go out 4 nights a week and do this. And they would just love to see it. And the fact that I was painting them, that their music was inspiring me to paint them, they were thrilled. And they would come and they brought their friends. It's like, there I am. People, people could recognize them. And that all of those paintings, all of those sketches I did were to nurture my soul. None of them were ever done to frame and put on a wall or mat or sell or advertise. I mean, none of them. I just went there to keep myself going because doing dog portraits was driving me crazy doing it. And I did a lot of perspective, architectural renderings, all kinds of things to make money. But that didn't make my heart sing. I was alive when I was painting in the dark with the music going. So that show, I think, gave me more satisfaction seeing the musicians come in and the smiles on their faces. And it was acknowledging them as musicians, because who acknowledges them as musicians when they're going to these open mics and jams? They're trying to be something, like I was trying to be an artist. So that was one. And the other is that my work started to be shown in hospitals. And I was asked several times to have exhibits because people saw my work, my large abstracts, my orbs, as healing art. Mm-hmm. And in the conversation you and I had earlier, when I said, why, please explain to me why you respond the way you do to my work. That's, I never created my art to be healing, though I love that it is. And I love that I allow room in my art for people to enter into it and become healed by it. And I think it's the frame of mind that I'm in when because I'm responding directly to the marks that are being made. I'm not imposing myself on my work, especially my abstract. I'm listening. For me, it's very spiritual. Wow. I'm listening to the universe when I'm painting.
Yes.
And I wouldn't have really thought about it that way, but but I kept wondering, why is it that even my photographs sometimes, it's just a photo, it's not even a painting. Why are people saying that's healing? There was a woman who purchased a print of a piece from me, and she met up with me later, and she said that she wanted to let me know the print was okay, and I wasn't quite sure where she was going with that. And she looked really upset. She looked like she was about to cry, and she said, "Well, I'm helping it to heal." And I thought, well, it was of a hydrangea blossoms, and I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, "Well, it was really terrible." She said, "It hangs above my bed. My husband's in my bed. And when the Trade Center went down, the prince saw it." Okay, so what she was saying was that she and her husband witnessed the Trade Center going down, but she couldn't do that. So what she was doing was healing herself
through the art,
because she was so upset that this peaceful work of art that she had of mine had witnessed such a terrible thing. And these stories that was kind of extreme, but they weren't unusual. And I thought, I don't get it. Like, I'd ask other artists and they said, "No, people don't say that stuff to me." So I accepted it and was grateful for it. Like, I'm glad. What do these piles of paintings do? If I don't share them, if they don't do something for someone else in a positive way, what's the point?
Yeah.
So,
Chris, if people want to work with you, in what capacity do you offer services to people?
Oh, well, eventually there will be live workshops again.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, I teach mini courses on Skillshare, and that's skillshare.com/Chris Carter Art. It's all one word. And I teach more deep dive courses for those who really want to, like I did, really want to learn the skills so that I can play with it. I mean, I learned skills so I can play. And that's on chriscarterart.com.
I'll make sure those links are included.
Yeah, and there are so many free videos on YouTube, and that's also youtube.com/chriscarterart.
I'll make sure I link those nearby wherever I post this.
Thank you.
It has been an inspirational conversation for me today. I have learned so much from you just in our short time together today, and I know everybody that's watching this has. And I just want to tell you how grateful I am to have you in the program, in my program, and to be working with you. And you're amazing. So I'm grateful for you.
Thank you. I do want to share with you that I'm very new to the program, and I love it. And that's part of why I'm so hectically busy these days, because I'm getting so much more response with just these little tweaks that I've learned from you. But I do want to share with you that another person who's in your program got in touch with me, and I'm thrilled because she has a nonprofit that helps young people in the inner city and who are kind of considered to not ever be able to be entrepreneurs, and she's teaching them to be entrepreneurs, and she's asked me to also help with that program and present to them, which I just love. So through you, I've been able to share my passion for expressing my experience of life through art with other people.
This is unbelievable for me to hear. I'm further inspired because that's why we created what we created. It's not just a couple of tips. It's really a whole strategy and a community that works together to build each other up. Yeah. This is the perfect example of it. You've blown me away today.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for having such an accessible approach to it. It's there's so many people out there, and I've learned a lot from a lot of people, but I find that I feel it's okay to just take a little nibble at a time, because I don't have a lot of time in my day. I'm a workaholic.
Yeah.
So if I can just take this little bit, and you're not yelling at me because I haven't done all the lessons in the course yet, And I'm grateful for that.
Well, thank you. Those are incredibly kind words. We've designed it specifically for that.
Good.
Chris, you're amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, and I know we'll look forward to following just many more amazing things that are to come from you.
And I look forward to being able to jump onto your live session too. So I'll see you again there soon.
We'll see you again there soon. Thanks again, Chris.
You're welcome. Thanks, Chris.